What's up, cycling fanatics? Thanks for joining us for another episode of Pack Chatter. We got a good show for you today. A lot of exciting stuff going on with racing coming back online in some cases, and that's what we're going to discuss today. Is a couple of good friends of mine came on to talk about how they are planning to put on a race in just a couple short weeks and how they're going to pull that off under all of the craziness that has gone on this season. So before we get started and jump into that conversation, there's a couple things I want to tell you about. First, Dirty Bikes Gravel Series. We went online this year, or kind of online this year, because we couldn't have the races. And what is turning out, I think, to be a really fun, exciting format for people that's loaded with prizes and gives some really fun courses for you to get out and ride. And you still got time to join it. So here's how it works. Register at dirtybikes.com or on BikeReg, and you get invited to a private Strava group with 5 course options. Those courses are spread between just outside of Buffalo, New York, and north of Syracuse, New York. So you got 5 options across western and central New York that are really fun, challenging gravel courses that all are 50 miles or less. Each course has 3 timed segments, so you can compete in those timed segments in your typical categories. We have all the same category offerings that we would have at a normal Dirty Bikes race. And the winners of those categories and those timed segments over the course of the series will win a Castelli customized Dirty Bikes Gravel Series jersey. But we also have tons and tons and tons of prizes in our raffle system that you get entered in every time you complete a course. So complete 1 course, your name goes in once. Complete 2 courses, your name goes in twice. Complete all 5 courses, and that's right, your name goes in 5 times. That raffle offers tons of prizes. We have the grand prize of a brand new gravel bike from our good friends at Growler right out of Rochester, New York. We have $1,000 of gift cards for Castelli's online store. We have $500 worth of gift cards for Empire Hemp's online store. And we're going to give away over $100 in Boom energy bars. So lots of really fun stuff here. There's some cash in those open series. You can go out and compete. You can ride with your friends. You can ride the segments, come back together, ride casual, crush another segment. You can go out and not care about the segments at all and just finish the courses and get entered in the raffles. And the best part about all of it is we're raising money for the Bahati Foundation. And right now we are over $1,000 that we will donate at the end of the series. And the more people who sign up, the more money that we will be able to donate. So if you haven't heard of the Bahati Foundation, you can check them out at bahatifoundation.org. They've been around for a decade and are founded by the legendary racer Rahsaan Bahati. And they do a lot of great work in getting kids and including diversity and creating diversity within our sport. So we thought that that was a really great cause with a really great history to go out and support and develop cycling. So check it out, dirtybikes.com. We're also sponsored by Legacy Bikes. That's a Legacy with an I, Legaci, bikes.com. All your balance bike needs right there with my man Todd. My little girl has one. She loves it. We've been riding it all summer long. Tons of fun. I can't tell you how happy I am with the balance bike and with what she can do on it at 3 years old that she would never be able to do on a bike with training wheels. I mean, just isn't even comparable. So get on legacybikes.com. Check out what they've got there. Give Todd a call, hit him up, and he'll hook you up. We also got a special offer for you today from our friends at Boom Energy Bar. You can go to plantpoweredperiod.com and use the code DGBS, Dirty Bikes Gravel Series, DBGS30. DBGS30, and that will save you 30% on a purchase of a 6-pack of their energy bars. Again, we'll be giving some of those away as part of the raffles of the series, but you can get a discount there and check them out. They're delicious. My man Andrew Gacy runs that company. He's done a great job developing a really phenomenal bar for riding and fuel refueling, and they taste great. So go on and check them out at plantpoweredperiod.com. All right, so let's talk about today's show. It's a bit of a controversial topic because we have a couple guys here, good friends, who are trying to bring races back online, and there's a lot of people who think maybe we shouldn't be racing right now, and there's certainly very little racing going on right now. But they're excited to go. They've gone through the appropriate channels and gotten all the permits, and they have a good plan, and they wanted to come on and they wanted to talk about that so that people could be informed and they could understand what it is they're doing, why they're doing it, and how they're going to keep everybody safe. So a couple of just notes here before we drop into the conversation. First, one of the big topics and one of the really difficult things that these guys have to manage is that in New York State, there is a banned states list, I guess, for the lack of a better word, or a banned travel list from states that have high infection rates right now. And I know that list is ever changing in terms of what states are on it and off it based on infection rates. But the question was, how do we deal with riders who are coming from those states, and they had riders interested in racing from those states. So originally when we had the conversation, they had a plan for that. I won't go into those details, but since the conversation, they've changed their plan on that, and they have decided that they will not allow riders under any circumstances from states who are banned by New York to race. So if riders sign up from a state that's listed on the New York State government website that says that their infection rates are too high to come to New York, they are returning refunding their money and politely telling them that they can't come based on those regulations from the state. A very hard decision. There was some other ways to look at that and some other ways to weigh that out, and I think they went through that process, and in the long run did what they felt was safe for their event and best for the people coming for the event. And I give them a lot of credit for being able to constantly evaluate and reevaluate as these things change, because it's a really hard circumstance and things are constantly changing. So you make one decision that looks good or sounds good, and then 2 days later we have different information and you got to do something else, and that's really hard when putting on an event to have to shift like that. So I think that decision alone really speaks to the credit and the character of these guys as they're trying to put this race on, that they're really trying to do the right thing and looking at every angle and really making safe decisions. So I cut that part out of the conversation completely on the final editing because the information was incorrect, but it is an important topic to know, and they have covered that on their Bike Reg page. So you can look at that for some more information or reach out to them if you want to talk to them about it directly, but it was something we talked quite a bit about at the time. All right. I think that's it. Let's drop you into the conversation. I guess one other maybe small note that I think on a personal level that I should probably throw out there. During most of this conversation, Todd and I kind of let these guys explain themselves and talk about like what they were doing, which I think is what everybody wants to hear. It's not something that we felt we really needed to editorialize in any capacity. Like I said, they are good friends of mine. We've known them for a long time. They put on really good events. And I've been involved with the event many times over the years as a racer, and the last couple years I've announced it, and I guess that's where the personal note comes in. I didn't include this in the conversation, but I think it's important to note that I won't be present this year, and that my lack of presence is not some sort of statement against the race or against racing in general. It's simply a decision based on what's right for me and my family currently. My wife and I live with her father, who is over 80 years old, and we just feel that attending these type of events is not right for us. It doesn't mean that we think other people shouldn't be doing it or that we're boycotting it or anything along those lines. So I didn't want that to be misconstrued, and I didn't really interject that in the conversation. But for people who know me and go to the event regularly, I thought it might be important to make that note. All right, so that's enough from me. I hope you enjoy the conversation. I really appreciate these guys coming on, taking the time to be transparent and to really try to inform everybody of the very difficult process that they are working through to bring racing back online in Western New York. So without any more, here is Tom Weichman and Rich Scaduto from 2 Days of Buffalo.
You'll never go out on a training ride and dig that deep.
Awesome. We won gold.
They're life rides.
I'm like, dude, I'm still figuring this out.
Lose sight of the fact that it's whoever goes faster.
This isn't a road race. This isn't a mountain bike race.
The sensei of sprint, Todd Shesky.
My eyes are coming out of my head. Just get in here.
All right, so we're here with the guys from 2 Days of Buffalo, and we're going to talk a little bit about the race you guys are looking to set up in sort of some crazy times here. But first, we'll kind of get some background and just kind of talk about who you guys are a little bit for people who don't know you. For people who don't know us, the four of us have known each other for a very long time. We've been in each other's events. We've raced against each other. I've worked at your guys' events, so we've known each other a really long time, and I'm really happy you guys came on to talk about what you're planning here in the next couple of weeks. So we have Rich and Tom with us today. Thanks, guys. How are you doing? Let's start with Rich. Talk a little bit about how you doing and kind of where you're at right now with this sort of craziness of trying to put on a race under the current circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing good. I think, when summertime hit, that made things a little bit easier for us cyclists because we could at least get outside, and even if we were riding alone, just be able to get out and ride, and that brought back some normalcy, I'd guess. But now putting the race on, things have been kind of busy, obviously, as you can imagine. Just putting a race on is a lot of work, but now putting a race on kind of under these circumstances with these conditions, it's a lot of new stuff. So it's been keeping us busy. But overall I'm doing pretty good. The weather's in Buffalo, New York, the weather in the summertime is something to be cherished and enjoyed. So I'm getting out and enjoying myself.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Todd and I complain about the weather on probably 90% of our podcast. And one of the great things is the spring, summer, fall of here is just so good. We can never complain about that, right? In Western New York, it's perfect. You don't get any better.
Yeah, it always reminds me of years ago when we were doing the downtown crew, and I was race director for that. And my friend John Wersing was running the Rite Aid team that actually our friend Bill was also riding for at the time. But they had a couple of the Argentinian guys on there, and we got them some host housing over in Mendon. And so they spent the week here riding around Mendon and Bloomfield, right? And they're just like, these roads are great. There's no traffic. We want to move here. And and my friend John was like, you haven't lived here in the winter. So
you know what though, Todd? I know you're out in the winter. I mean, we get out, you got to make the best of it. The roads, the roads are still the same. It's just a little colder.
Yep. Yeah, my cold tolerance has diminished some than it was 15, 20 years ago. But yeah, I mean, mostly I still get out though. It's a matter of climatizing and just adjusting. So, but but I take 80 like today, nice 82 degrees. Yeah, man, bring it on. So I think you're right. It's been nice to be able to get out, roll some roads and stuff and get some normalcy, especially since since beginning of March. I mean, everything's just gotten wiped clean, right? I mean, it's like all of us are sitting there going wow, just waiting for the next shoe to drop or what the next thing. I mean, last week, Masters Track Worlds got canceled officially. A little while before that, it was nationals, and sort of wow, the big boulders just got pushed off the table, and it makes it tough. But you guys have some experience with this event too, to kind of give people a little sense of you're coming in and putting this event on. Anybody that's listening is like, well, these guys know what they're doing, or what are they? So kind of give us a little. Where's the event kind of? What's its history been? Kind of what's your been involvement in getting to this point, even though it's obviously now a little more challenging.
Yeah, I can kind of talk to that stuff a little bit more. We officially formed as a club in 2012, but we had been kind of a bunch of guys on a couple of different teams or a couple of different clubs for a couple of years even before that, going back to 2008, 2009, promoting some races. And Todd, I actually met you for the first time, and I helped you score Eric Curtis's Romp in the Swamp cyclocross race. I don't know if you remember that or not.
Yep. I didn't remember that was
I
our
was
first
there
time
too.
we met, but I do remember the Romp in the Swamp and officiating that. Yes.
Yeah. So it wasn't the year of the mud disaster, but it was the year before the mud disaster.
That was my question. I thought Todd was in the truck, and that was the same truck that caused the great mud disaster. But it must have been a different year.
It may have been.
You can we'll just blame me now. See, and then
That's right. That's right. But so yeah, we were putting on some races, back helping out Eric a whole bunch with his Buffalo 51 and some races back then, and then we started kind of putting on our own. And like I mentioned, in 2012, we officially formed EARC. That year, we either directly put on or helped put on 5 different events, and mostly because of that, we actually won the USAC Best New Club of the Year award that year, because we had so much stuff going on and so many guys, but we were technically a brand new club, so it was pretty cool. But so I think my best count is 2 Days of Buffalo this year. 2020 is going to be our 30th event that we've put on in around a decade. And that kind of comes out to about 50 race days total, because we host a skills clinic. It's been almost every year until this year, which is usually 3 race days. And 2 Days of Buffalo is 3 events with the 3 different stages. But we've also hosted single off criteriums. We've hosted single off time trials. We've hosted a whole bunch of cross races, sometimes 2 a year. And actually in 2015, we even hosted the New York State Cross Championship. So we've put on a whole bunch of stuff, over a good solid decade of time. So I think that's about the same time that Tony was coming in to start and put on his races too. And I think I met Tony the first year that you put on your crit, kind of hanging out there, and when it was like 1,000 degrees and we had to do bottle hand ups at the crit.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you guys have been on races for a long time. I've raced in a lot of your events, and they're always really well received. They're always really well run, and certainly since then we've helped each other out on a lot of levels, putting on races and stuff like that. So and you guys are right in that Buffalo scene, which is, even though you have that EARC club, you guys work very closely with the Buffalo Club, and that's a very old, very rich crit area or road racing culture for sure. So it's always cool to come up to your events for those reasons, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a lot of different stuff going on here, and the Buffalo Bicycling Club, BBC, is definitely the one that's been around for the longest and has done the most and has the most history here. And we get to kind of work with them on a lot of stuff. So it's a really good scene up here, I think.
Definitely. And certainly in years past, you've always gotten a really good Canadian draw too for your events. So you get some really competitive road racing in August, because certainly the Western New York people come out, and you get people from other states, but you also get a nice Canadian draw.
Yeah, and that's sort of what actually sets our date for 2 Days of Buffalo at being the first weekend of August every year, is that it's a Canadian long weekend holiday. They do a long weekend the first weekend of the month every month, and being the long weekend holiday, we get extra folks from Canada to come down. So it's really been pretty good for us. We're always joking, saying, "Geez, how do we get on the Ontario Cycling Association's calendar as one of their events?" Because we get a lot of folks that come down. So yeah, it's been really good.
Cool. All right, so let's get into sort of what we got going on this year. I think people probably have a lot of questions. So let's start just sort of at the beginning for you guys, because you're looking at this year and basically everything has been canceled, and even events that are scheduled after you guys, several cross events have been canceled and things like that. What is it that made you guys go, okay, we're gonna still try to hold this? And then, we can talk about the details, of course, but why is it that you guys said, yeah, we think we can put this event on safely?
Yeah, Tony, great question, right? So, actually, it's kind of funny. This year, we started early, trying to promote 2 days. Tom and we've been kind of chatting since, I think, like November of last year, or even sooner than that. And one of the things that we've really tried to do, and it's kind of like our mantra or our motto or whatever, is we always try to put on like the best possible race we can with the resources that we have. So that's always, and for those people that have done our events, like the feedback that we've gotten, that's kind of what people say. I mean, we try to go, the extra mile when it comes to making sure that, we have enough marshals and, enough like rider support, pits, neutral support, motos, wheel cars, all that stuff. So, we're racers, right? So, and we know from our experience in doing races that when you show up and do a race that has that kind of support for riders, it really elevates it and kind of, motivates you. And, when you're done racing, you're thinking, wow, I did this really cool race. And it's just kind of an exciting thing. So, we've kind of had that motivation of this year kind of continuing to make our race, the best possible race it could be. And, obviously all this kind of COVID stuff hit, and, Tom and I, as soon as it hit, like the first thing we're thinking is, well, what does this mean for 2 days? What does this mean for 2 days? And, just kind of being glued to the TV and, glued to the news to, try to take in as much as possible and, deal with kind of all the changes that everybody's dealing with. And, I would say a couple months ago, we started thinking, we really kind of got to make a decision on what we're going to do with this. Cause, a lot of actually making the race happen, happens months out. There's a lot of planning that has to get done. And we kind of came up with a game plan, right? And we basically said we need to kind of, reach out to all the various people in our network that makes this race happen to understand really if we can have the race, right? So, and that's everyone, right? It's, the local municipalities, USAC, our sponsors, the fire departments, law enforcement. I mean, in the communities we put our races on, really, like, everyone in that community is kind of involved in putting it on. And, I have to say, I was actually a little bit surprised, because as we were having these conversations, and I think we started having a lot of these conversations in maybe around like the May-ish timeframe, April timeframe, it became kind of clear that there actually was a path to putting this race on. And, the big thing that kind of, came out of those conversations was, hey, New York State has guidelines, right? If you want to do anything right now with all the quarantines and the phases, you've got to kind of understand that path and the kind of the New York Forward website and the New York Forward path that the state has put out, kind of bringing us forward to make things normal again, right? So, we'll kind of talk about that in a little bit more detail, later. But that was kind of the path that we took to go, through that and do all the things we needed to do for New York Forward to be in compliance for all of our local municipalities and everybody. So, that's basically how we decided that we could have a safe race. There's guidance out there, and, we're just going to continue to follow it. And the second, like, biggest thing was we understood early on that we needed to be super flexible, because obviously this is, putting a race on in this type of environment, there's a lot of changes. And there's a lot of new information coming out regularly. There's a lot of new guidance from the state coming out regularly. So, being flexible and kind of having a plan to put this race on that allowed us to be flexible. And truthfully, a lot of the people that we interact with, the municipalities, that they were also, they understood, right? So they were very flexible in working with us. So, once we kind of found that path and found the rules that we needed to follow, what we needed to adhere to, we knew it was going to be a lot of work, but basically, at the end, we felt that if we did these things and put the time into it, we could have a safe race. And that's what we're planning on doing.
So with that, then let's jump into some of those details. So let's start with the New York, because it sounds like the New York Forward website was sort of the turning point for you guys to go, okay, this is possible. What are the things from New York State specifically that have been put forth that you have to comply with, that you've set up in order to make this go off?
Yeah. So, I think the kind of the first thing is, and we're kind of beyond this right now, but, as we were going through the last few months, there were phases of kind of quote unquote returning to normal, which obviously we haven't returned to normal yet, but, there were 4 phases. And basically, once you got to phase 4, that's when some sporting events could kind of start to take place, right? And, as we were going through the phases, There were a lot of metrics that the regions in Western New York had to meet in order to kind of progress throughout those phases. So as we kind of started to get through them, we were in contact with all of our partners, and they basically said, okay, once phase 4 gets here, we'll really know what has to happen to make this race go on. So once phase 4 happened, we actually New York State they have a template. It's a New York Forward Safety Plan template, and basically, this template it's more targeted toward like businesses, but it basically says, if you want to have some kind of operation in New York State, these are the things that you need to plan for, and you need to kind of fill this out and follow the various things that you need to do. So and it's very comprehensive, and it's based on CDC guidelines, and basically what it boils down is like enhanced hygiene. So at our race this year, we've got hand washing stations, more bathrooms. We just spent a whole lot of money on hand sanitizer and masks and cleaning products, and it's not just racers, right? We've got a lot of volunteer marshals that help out. We've got officials, so we want to have that availability of hygiene and kind of PPE stuff for everyone, just if anything, to make people feel comfortable, to know that if they want to sanitize, they can. And in addition to that, having a plan to be cleaner, right? Like, so we've got to have like logs for cleaning kind of high touch areas, and making sure that everything is kind of meets a high standard of cleanliness. So we've kind of got that plan put into place. Social distancing is a big thing, right? We had to kind of identify our high traffic areas, and obviously for bike racers and promoters, your high traffic areas, like before a race staging, after a race, a packet pickup, that's kind of a big thing. Kind of before and after the race, how do you kind of deal with the group of riders, right? And the big thing for this year is just social distancing and masks, right? So we're going to have signage out there. We've kind of developed plans to kind of mitigate the risks in some of those high touch areas, like, for example, and we'll probably get into it in even more detail later, but for number pickup, right? There's actually no registration on site. Everything is going to be done ahead of time online. There'll be no day of registration, and basically, instead of your normal line for registration to sign in, basically it's going to be a social distance line, and we're gonna have someone that's gonna kind of ask you some questions that New York State has said we should be asking. We're going to temp you, and then check you off on our list if you kind of meet all the criteria to be able to race, and then you're going to walk up to a board where your number is going to be stapled, and you'll remove your number, and that'll be it. So it'll be totally touchless.
All right. So yeah, sorry. Yeah, I want to make sure I think you're on an interesting point here, and I want to make sure we kind of maybe develop that so people can see sort of what that looks like. So if I'm coming to the race, I don't have to sign a waiver because USAC and Bike Reg have finally figured out how to get along, and that works now, right? Is that true?
Exactly.
It didn't work last year, so but I think it works this year, right? So that's cool.
Yeah, and Tony, I was just going to say we actually tested it out last year at our cross race.
Yeah.
Which is a smaller event, so we kind of use that to test out new things. And last year we tested out the online waivers at our smaller cross race, and it worked really well. So we're feeling pretty good about going forward with it at the bigger event this year.
Yeah, and I've used it with NAX before for my gravel races online, and it's always worked well. It's just USAC wouldn't comply with it, or wouldn't, whatever the problem was, I don't know. Right. But they weren't on the same page until it was supposed to come out this year. So I'm not putting on a USAC race this year, so I didn't know if it had actually come through, but that's good to know. So we don't have to worry about waivers. You mentioned masks a few times. Are people being given masks when they get there? Do they have to race with masks? I'm seeing races in some parts of the country where racers are actually racing with masks. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so our policy is when you're waiting in line to get your registration, to get your number, and actually going to the race and lining up for the race, you have to wear a mask, right? And as soon as your race is done, you have to wear a mask. When you're actually racing, though, in New York State, according to the regulations they've published for sporting, if it, in scenarios in your sport, if it's not feasible to wear a mask, you don't have to wear a mask. So the decision that we made was for the actual race, we wouldn't, force racers to wear masks. Now, flexibility is our big thing, right? So, if there are certain racers and it would make them feel more comfortable to wear a mask during the race, we have no problem with that. So, we kind of leave that decision up to the racers. But the big thing, and we've done a lot of the or listened to a lot of the materials that like USAC has put out, on events and the risk before and after an event, in this kind of scenario, in their opinion, is kind of the biggest, right? So we really want to make sure that, when racers are kind of, in an environment where they normally would kind of be congregating, they're basically not, right? And they're social distance and they're wearing a mask and kind of following the rules. And, we're gonna be out there kind of, enforcing that, right? Making sure they do social distance. There'll be markings on the floor or on the sidewalk, for the line. They have to stay 6 feet apart, and we will have masks as well. So, if a racer was to show up and they did forget a mask, we're happy to give one. And, we have more than enough masks for racers and volunteers to be able to support that. So, so that's our mask plan.
Did you consider forcing racers to brace with a mask? Was that something you guys kind of went back and forth on, or like what kind of led to sort of the decision of not to do it? And did USAC have any guidelines on that? Because we haven't talked a lot about that yet, but I'm curious to see or to hear what are some of the things that USAC told you have to do or don't have to do, or where were they on that?
It's kind of an interesting thing because a lot of it is just providing kind of facts and observations, right? Like USAC has brought in like a lot of medical professionals and such, and this is all kind of very new, right? So they're kind of looking at the facts, the limited facts that have kind of come in, and trying to give the best guidance they can. For us, our big resource, especially in New York State, is really kind of following the state's instructions, right? That's, in our, I think our state is a pretty unique state. Obviously, we had a lot of cases really early, and I think that our state has put had put a lot of kind of restrictions in place and a lot of guidance at the state level, and instructions for people, right? So, for us, I think making sure that we were really in compliance with the state guidelines was important, and the state guidelines were very clear on, it's really kind of, before the event and after the event that you have to wear masks, but actually during the event, for your sport, you don't have to. And I think it's funny, Tom and I, just kind of on some casual rides, right? We're starting to see some local sporting events kind of start happen again, right? So, we were on a ride the other day and we saw, a bunch of baseball games happening, right? And, if the athletes are in a position where it's not feasible to wear masks, they don't have to. And, kind of before and after, and in situations where, it's okay to wear a mask, we want you to wear a mask. So.
I think the thing I was going to kind of tag on that is we're not experts in virology or spread of disease, and none of us are, right? So I think that all that anybody can do is try to follow the guidelines that are put out by the people who are the experts, and in this case it's the state, and that's what we're following.
All right. How about families? Like, is this something like I'm coming to race? Do I bring my wife and kids to come see me race, or my husband, or my, girlfriend, boyfriend, parents? Like, what's that look like from your end?
Yeah. Well, it's actually, from my perspective, it's kind of funny because for many years, something that Tom and I and our club has always focused on is not just putting on a race or putting on an event, right? And Tony, I know you can relate to this. Todd, you can relate to this too. You always want to kind of engage the community and bring people in as much as you can to kind of enjoy the sport as a spectator. What makes it funny is this year it's kind of the opposite, right? Like, our whole thing is just trying to keep everybody as safe as possible and following social distancing. So, from our perspective, and we've had a few people reach out to us and ask us, hey, is it okay if my family comes? I'm basically telling people no. I think that for this year, our focus is just kind of putting on a safe race. At the end of the day, where our races are very large outdoor park areas, right? Where it's extremely easy to social distance, right? So, in theory, it probably wouldn't be a huge issue, but, from our perspective, if people are asking, we're pretty much telling them, for this year, it's probably best if they don't come, just because, the more people that we have there, the more of an event it becomes, right? And we want to make it safe, for the racers that are there, and really, kind of limit it to that and have as few variables around that as possible. So, that's what we're doing for this year. And our focus is, trying to, do the best we can to kind of enforce that, like we, Tom and I decided that, in our start finish line area, we do not want to have any spectators. Right. So, if people were to kind of come to the start finish line and watch, we're going to, very politely ask them to leave, just because, we don't want to have a bunch of people kind of congregating in that area. If anything, because of the perception, so, this year that will be our focus. And I definitely look forward to next year, or when we can start focus on actually having an event. Cause obviously that's, we've worked really hard to make for that over the past few years. And, we want to get back to that in the future.
It was funny. Rich and I were kind of having this discussion a while ago, and like Rich kind of said before, we're always trying to put on the most professional event. And, even though we're a grassroots race, we try to make it as professional as we can and have as many bells and whistles as we can. So Tony, you guys come in and, you do announcing and music and, interviews and stuff like that in a normal year. And we just can't do that stuff this year. But, we kind of pride ourselves on all those bells and whistles. But really this year, the bells and whistles are even just having an event, having the race. And, it's going to be really different this year, I think, from a racer's perspective, where, like Rich was saying, normally we like them to come in and do their race, and then they can kind of hang out for the rest of the day and watch other races, or even just hang out until their own race. But this year it's sort of come in, you do your race, and you go back to your car and you leave. Unfortunately. And, I really hope in 2021 we can get back to our normal path of having sort of that race village with all the team tents and, a couple of vendors and you guys calling the announcing and all this stuff, because that's what really makes the race extra fun.
Yeah, that's a tough situation. I mean, I've been really lucky. You guys have invited us to do that the last couple of years. We've really enjoyed helping you a little bit with that end. And certainly as I put on events and you guys put on events, we're always kind of bouncing ideas off each other. But a lot of that comes, one, it's fun for the racers, but it's also really important for that sponsorship visibility. I mean, funding races is hard, right? I mean, you guys know how race budgets go. It's not an easy thing to do. And certainly sponsorship goes a long way in covering costs and being able to put these events on. So as you got to cut down on those kind of things, how are your sponsors in those conversations, knowing that they're not going to get the same level of visibility that you guys work really, really hard to make cool? I mean, you had a little VIP tent last year for people to sit by the finish line, and you guys do a good job of doing that. Sponsors come over, we talk to them on the mic and interview them about stuff. So losing that piece, were they upset about that? Did they understand? Are you concerned that getting them back next year will be a hard thing to do?
I think up until here, everybody's been really flexible. Everybody understands that this is a strange year and it's a strange situation. So we're making do the best that we can. And I think all the sponsors have been on board with that. So yeah, they're going to get a little less visibility this year. But that it is what it is in 2020, unfortunately.
Yeah, and you guys mentioned something about with the congregating at the finish area and so forth, and it's a pretty big park and stuff. But kind of picking up on when you say how the perception part of that, and not having groups of people. I mean, even if they're masked, just to kind of keep the optics, if you will, of that intact. So along with that, I mean, the fact that you're having event, I'm sure you guys see stuff on social media. I mean, there was something on Twitter today, and somebody was accusing USAC of even issuing permits, and how could they? And I'm not getting my license next year now. You've had the pickle race get canceled after three different races, and number 4 got canceled because some people made a really big deal out of it, and they were wearing masks while racing. So when you guys look at kind of the optics of those things, how are you kind of prepared to say, okay, and the sponsors as well, and to say, okay, we're following New York State guidelines, we've done all the things. How do we then approach people that are going to, because there are going to be people that are going to be upset by the fact that there is an event. And even if it's like, well, the field size is 50, it's it's reduced, it's this, it's that, and we've done all the guidelines. How do you prepare for that, and how do you keep those optics good for yourselves, your sponsors, and those involved?
You know what, Todd? I think it's, from my perspective, it's pretty simple. You just have to do everything that you possibly can. You have to, as a promoter, like the day before that race, you have to go to sleep and know that you've done everything that you possibly can to make it a safe race. And in a way, I think we're a little bit lucky because New York State does have such specific guidelines and like a specific plan that you have to adhere to. And I mean, this document that we had to create is, I think it's like 16 or 20 pages long. Like, it is very detailed, and we have to kind of spell out all of the areas that we're focusing on, and have it documented, right? And that's something that we had to provide in the city of Buffalo to get our permit to be able to actually host this race. So from my perspective, I think doing the best you can to really make sure you've gone above and beyond. And I think for people that have done our race, right, like, and my experience as a racer, we a lot of races, they'll have 1 or 2 marshals out on a turn, right? For our road race, most of the turns that we have, 3 to 4 plus marshals plus, local law enforcement. So, we really, like, we go as above and beyond as we possibly can. Just to make the experience as good as it could be. And I think it carries over to this, right? We're just going to do everything that we possibly can, in the hopes that we can mitigate that kind of stuff as much as possible. And, I think at this point, we have, I have to say, when we decided that we were going to go forward with this, and we started, actually promoting it, I was curious to see what the reception was. And so far, especially in our local cycling community, the reception that we have gotten is extremely positive. A lot of local racers have been coming out to us. I think a lot of people in general, because there's, not as much stuff to do right now, they're turning to the bike, right? So, there's a lot of guys that maybe haven't raced the last couple years that, they see us putting on, a really safe race, seeing that we're, they already know that we have a reputation of putting on a really well-run race. And, I think they have a lot of confidence in our ability to kind of execute on this. And, having that framework of the state plan, I think really helped. And, that's kind of all you can do, right? You can just, tick all the boxes, do absolutely everything that you can to make for a safe race. And hopefully, that kind of mitigates some of that negativity. And, like I said, we're flexible too. There's definitely been people that have come out to us with questions. We try to communicate things out as much as we can, as clearly as we can, so that there's no surprises for people. And also, any racer that registered, one of the big things of being flexible is having a refund policy, right? And we've designed our race so that we can have a very flexible refund policy. So, things are always changing, right? Someone may have registered 3 weeks ago, and the day before the race, something has changed. They're no longer comfortable doing the event. We're happy to give them a refund. We only want people racing that are 100%, more than 100% comfortable being there. And, we're happy to work with anyone that isn't, to make sure that it's, safe for everyone, and everyone kind of has that confidence.
Yeah, and I think that's those are, I mean, the flexibility, adaptability. I mean, because obviously all things change, right? So when we start talking about how are things going to look in like November, it's like I don't know, because things look different now than they did in March. But I think there's, along with that, and it's some things I've tried to reinforce on a couple social media things that I saw was, when people were really down on anything happening, I said, well, I think you have to keep in mind that not all things are the same in all regions. And when you start looking at, like, say, looking at these maps and so forth of infection rates and so forth, and you have some really bad hot areas, and you have a PA. Basically, if you take New York and PA and you go northeast, it's really been very highly mitigated to like something like less than 100 people per million or something like that. Um,
So what does registration look like so far then? Are you on kind of your normal track? Are you lower than normal? Are you higher because there aren't any races registering? Like what is that trajectory? I know as a race promoter, that's always kind of like the stop and go, right? Like you're like months out and then weeks out, you're like looking at these things. How is that different this year than it is under normal circumstances?
Yeah, that's interesting. Because in previous years, like we've said, we've had a lot of Canadians that register, and traditionally the Canadians register a little bit early. So, looking back year on year, um, we usually get a decent bump pretty early from Canadians that start to register, and then people will start to kind of trickle in. But it really does follow that standard kind of, bike reg registration curve, where I think it's, like 80% of your registration comes in the last few days of a race. So this year we actually we had people registering pretty much from the time we opened registration back in, I think it was January, when we opened it. Not a lot of people, but just, every couple of weeks we'd get someone that would register. And that even was true going into like March and April when COVID kind of took place. There were actually still people that were registering for the race, which I thought was kind of interesting. But as soon as we officially said, hey, we're having this race, we're going to we're going to go the extra mile and put on a safe race. We're going to follow all of the guidelines, and, communicated that to people, and also said we're going to be flexible and offer, refunds to people if they would like them. As soon as we got that, we did see a pretty big influx of participants. So it's kind of a weird curve, because immediately after we sent that email out, we got a bunch of registrations, and it actually, we were pretty much, we were very low, and it kind of instantaneously brought us over where we were last year at this time, right, with kind of all the Canadians registering. And so far, kind of the slope of the registration, it's almost like it's been twice as much registration that we've had this year for this point in time that we had in previous years. So there's definitely, we're definitely seeing demand, in our 1-2-3 race. So New York State, one of the things, and when we say we're trying to be in compliance, we're trying to be in compliance with every possible thing that we would need to be in compliance with. So in addition to New York Forward and looking at it from like being a quote unquote business, and also looking at it from being, a sport and following the sport guidelines, New York State also has a limitation of 50 people for mass gatherings, right? So we've we're limiting our field sizes to 50 people. So in our men's Cat 1-2-3 race, I think we only have 16 spots available. So that particular race is in my opinion pretty close to selling out soon. So that's another thing that we're trying to communicate to people. And when we do sell it out, we're going to have a wait list. But if people decide that they don't feel comfortable coming, or they want a refund, they no longer want to do the race, let us know as sooner than later, just so that we can kind of open those spots up to people that may want it. Because as we're seeing it right now, it's probably going to fill up pretty soon, and we want to make sure that we can get people in the race that want to race. So there is a little bit of overflow on that, just because we do offer masters categories as well. So, and our 4-5 race is a men's 4-5 race is usually a pretty big field. So that definitely I could see hitting the 50 mark pretty soon, given what we've seen. So,
All right. Was there anything that we haven't touched on that you think people need to know about what you're doing, why you're doing it, how it's going to keep people safe? Anything there that we feel like we still got to get out that we haven't hit yet?
I guess one thing that I kind of want to go back to, just like if you're a racer that's planning on coming to the race, I'm a racer, Tom is a racer, we're all racers on here. These races, they happen for racers. Like I think, and I've been in this position as well. I think we kind of take for granted races, people putting races on sometimes. And it's a lot of work to put the race on. And, we ask the racers that are going to be coming to just really be extra respectful and extra flexible and extra accommodating, mostly to the community, right? Because we want the perception of our race. We want, the municipalities to say, hey, I remember when those guys put that race on during COVID and they really went above and beyond. And the participants that they had were excellent. And everybody was wearing a mask and there was no drama. And, everyone was healthy and, they put on a really safe race. So, my ask to the racers is, when you show up there to get your number, when you're getting ready, when you're, before the race, when you're, stopping at a gas station to get a Gatorade, or after the race, when you're having a bite to eat, follow the rules, wear a mask, be respectful, social distance, don't give people a hard time. And I think if everyone that shows up to this race does that, we will have an extremely successful race. And it's like, I'm going to say it again, like, please just wear a mask, like wash your hands, be respectful. And, I think it will be a fantastic event. It will be exciting to get back out there and race. These, one of the things that, I think people love about our race is our courses are relatively flat. They're exciting races. You can show up to our race and have an incredible amount of fitness and do very well, or you can kind of show up to our race and just want to sit in and have the experience of doing the race and have a great time. And in our races, most people finish with the pack, and everybody finishes with a smile. And that's just, kind of what we want to see this year. And as soon as you're done, put that mask back on.
All right. Well, you guys have certainly had to do a lot of extra this year, and I think we're all hoping that we can kind of keep going in the direction that we are, and hopefully the restricted states will realize that if they kind of follow New York's path on this for as many things as we don't have right in New York. I think most of New England and New York has done really well with mitigating, given the high population density. And actually, I mentioned it to somebody, a Canadian, today on social media when he said, well, New York's numbers were really high. I said, well, yeah, okay, take New York City out of the picture, which was a starting point, and it's a much different picture. And I think, we're solidly in that, but still, time for caution is still now, not throw up our hands and pretend like there's nothing going on either. So, so kudos to you guys definitely. On a lot of extra work, but you guys are definitely reading the stuff and doing the recommendations. So I can know from doing enough of my own events that just the regular events is a lot of work. So you guys have really had to bump up your level here. So.
Thanks, Todd. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been a lot of work reinventing all of the logistics around our race in just a couple of weeks. I think we really got into this kind of portion of this, other than just probing, asking somebody here or asking somebody there if we think that this might be possible. But to the actual point of reinventing all the logistics, we've probably been doing it for the last 2-3 weeks now, and yeah, it's been a lot. So we're pretty confident that we can bring everybody a good, safe, and enjoyable race, and start providing that path back towards returning to racing in this area. That kind of builds on top of the club races that GVCC has been doing, and I think BBC has just started as well.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on and talking about this. As Todd said, it's a ton of extra work. We've all put on races before, and I can't imagine jumping onto this. But, you know, we've all known you guys for a long time, and you guys have always been very thorough and put on really good events. So I'm sure you're going to be able to do that again under some really tough circumstances. So thanks a lot, and we're looking forward to seeing you guys pull this off in just a couple weeks. Where's the best place for people to find your event or information about your event?
I think the Bike Reg page is the best. It's bikereg.com/2DOB for 2 days of Buffalo. And I would really, I was going to kind of bump in here at the end too and say that, you know, anybody that has any questions or you know, concerns about, well, how are they doing X? You know, we have real thorough information in our technical guide. I added an entire new section this year just on COVID guidelines. So if anybody has any kind of questions, you know, feel free to, you know, take a read through that guide. And if you still have questions or you know, you want to come to a race, you know, feel free to hit us up on the contact on the Bike Reg page.
Awesome. All right. Thank you very much, guys. We'll talk soon.
All right. Good luck, guys.
Have a good one, guys.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the episode. For more, check out our website at packchatterpodcast.com. And please hit us up with a good review on iTunes or any other place that you found this podcast to help us spread the word. And please hit up our sponsors, once again, nutbutter.com, who's a sponsor of this show.